Hello, everyone, and welcome to Ohm School Live. GP Walsh and myself, Lisa Berry, are here to help you. Master Spiritual Teacher is in class. Oh, all right. Who here hasn't had a hard conversation? Who here dreads having hard conversations? And who here just can't have those hard conversations? Today is, imagine that, about hard conversations. And there's so many reasons why they're hard, where the difficulty lies, how can we overcome this? And GP, I'm just going to start by sharing this. I have a friend who is, she's grown up, she's in her 50s, and she and I were having a phone conversation, and she really wanted to say something to her father. She's like, well, we just don't have those conversations. And I thought, why? And why can't we start? Can we start after decades? If that's not how our family does it, that's not how it works in this relationship. How do we overcome that? So I've asked GP if he would be so kind as to help us through. Maybe we'll do some tapping. Maybe we'll talk about why are all these things so hard? What's our biggest fear and how to get over them? So GP, hard conversations.
Well, first off, let me make it really clear. There's no way to make hard conversations easy.
Okay.
They're hard. They will be hard. They're a necessity. They're an unpleasant, uncomfortable necessity, and we just have to be willing to do them. But there's a lot of things in the way. There's fear of rejection, there's fear of hostility, there's fear of losing something. It always boils down to, I'm going to lose something here, right? And, look, we've all been trained, all of us within Western culture, going back 12,000 years, really, not even Western culture, but just the history in the last 12,000 years, this particular epoch, to defer to authority, and therefore very few of us actually have an internal sense of authority or self-validation. So there's a feeling that comes up when you're having a hard conversation of there's a lack of conviction as to whether you're right or wrong. And so step one is simply getting to the point where it isn't about being right or wrong. It's not about some kind of absolute thing, right? I can prove you're wrong and I'm right. You can simply have a difference of a viewpoint. It's that this doesn't work for me. That doesn't make you wrong. It doesn't make me right. It doesn't make the circumstance that should be any different. But if I know myself well enough, I know where to set my boundaries. I know where the line is, and it's okay to do that. Now, yes, it does cost. Some people will honor those boundaries, some will not. Some will not want to honor them, right? Because they love to step on boundaries. There's lots of people who do that. Some will honor the boundary, but it won't be anything that they can deal with, right? Which means the relationship comes to an end. She knows how to set boundaries, if that's Lucy.
I know, yeah. Lucy.
Yeah, she definitely knows how to set her boundaries. When it comes to something like family, there's a completely different dynamic involved, right?
Yeah.
And you're dealt your family. You don't choose them. Relationships with friends and lovers, and and people you work with, and not work with people too. You don't really choose those unless you're the one hiring people. But with family, because you don't choose them, you may not be able to have a conversation with them, right? So it's a waste of time to try to have a hard conversation with somebody who's not willing to listen, right? Because now it's just lopsided. Now it just becomes a pissing match, basically, and people are arguing with one another because there's an unwillingness in families. There's an unwillingness to acknowledge that you have a right to a boundary.
Ooh, that's good. Yeah. Yes.
And because of that, you simply can't. There is no hard conversation. There is no negotiation, and this is a very real and very common family dynamic. That you're wrong, shut up, go away, right? My way or the highway.
Oh,
Um, and this is what you have to be aware of, because sometimes a hard conversation is only worthwhile even attempting when there's someone who you can have a hard conversation with.
yes. You jumped on this is good. Because yes, but we're going to talk about what happens when you just know that person is not going to listen, can't listen, doesn't know how to listen. But before that, because you brought up a great point with family, when we're little, is there a certain magical age, or what's the maturity level of us, or do we always know how do we know when we do have a boundary that we can express? Like at 4, do we know that those, you don't watch 4-year-olds that go, I have to have a hard conversation. My boundary has been crossed. So at what
No.
maturity level or age do we have an awareness that we have a boundary and that a hard conversation needs to be had around it? And how does a child experience that?
Well, that's a very mature state for the child. They're just always setting their boundaries. They're always trying to find out where the boundaries are, right? And it's immediate, it's instant. They don't think about hard conversations. They just say it. No.
Right. Right.
Right?
Ah.
And then they get the pushback, and that's where they learn where the boundaries are, right?
Yes.
And if the parents are awake to a certain degree, they'll honor the boundary while at the same time protecting them, right? This is the art of being a parent, because the child needs that boundary, right? If the boundaries are too strict, they get constrained, they get really contained. Basically it's basically emotionally abusive. If they don't have any, right? Well, then they don't know who they are. They become wild. And very very a feeling of being very unsafe. The intelligent application of acknowledging or denying boundaries from a parent to a child is what will determine whether or not they can set them in the future, right? Or they become aggressive. They become over the top. It's a Boy, what an art! Being a parent's such an art form. But the idea that I have to ruminate about it comes later. It's when you're with somebody and they do something you don't like, but you don't feel like you can say anything about it, and that happens later. That doesn't happen with children.
Right. Okay. But
It's
I
learned.
love that that's where we're learned. That's where it is learned though. And now I can see this all coming back to the tribe. We're being taught by our tribe, whoever that might be, whether it's biological parents, other parents, people who are just maybe were raised in school. I have friends who were raised, they went to boarding school, so they have multiple tribe parents, teachers around them. And you might not have those loving conversations with schoolmasters and things like that. Right. So
You can't.
Right. So do you learn how to have hard conversations and those boundaries later, or is it through experience?
It's got to be through experience, because if it's not done when we're young, and most of the time it isn't, our boundaries are either violated or they aren't set at all, or both, which is really unusual when that happens. But in my life, it was always complete neglect, do whatever I damn well please, to totally oppressive for days at a time, right? And it was nuts. It was nuts. So you don't really learn how to do it. So you can become wild and self-abusive at the same at the same time. We have to learn the very fact that you become aware of the fact that you can't, and that it's costing you, that you defer to others and it's costing you, that you really want something and you can't even ask for it, or somebody's taking advantage of you and you can't say no. To be aware of that is to go, oh, I don't know how to do this.
Yes. Okay. And so I like that. So so we know that we're like, wow, I really want something. I would like, is it that we want them to know how we feel, or we just need to express it? And sometimes if it's so scary and the cost is too much, so we'd rather not have it, let that cost be the cost, versus having that conversation and being like, whoa, what can of worms did I just open here?
Well, right, because when you have a conversation like that, the risk is that you are seeking a conversation to change the dynamic of the relationship. That's the only reason you do it.
Right.
Which means that it is going to change, and it's either going to change for the better. The hard conversation will end up with with a negotiation or kissing and making up or whatever it might be, or it could signal the end of it. That this is simply a boundary that neither can compromise on, and you have to go your separate ways. So there's always a risk, and therein lies the whole problem. We're afraid of losing. We're afraid of letting go of what we have, even though it's not adequate and we don't really want it. We want something better. But the fear of having nothing at all is so great that we tend to just kind of accept. We settle for what it is. Then we could just, oh, this is the way it always is. Everybody's like this. It can't be any better. We have all sorts of ways of kind of suppressing the fact that we're just very unhappy about it, and that we're not being acknowledged. And of course, most of us haven't been, and so we get into relationships as adults where we're not acknowledged, and it feels comfortable. We don't like it, and maybe we finally manage to get out of it some way, and then end up doing it again.
Yes, and when you said about settling, is that we're settling for our emotions, or we're settling? Can we settle for somebody else saying, you know what, they're just not going to get it? I also have to be settled with the fact that they're not going to get it, or is that a lack? I don't want to say a lack, a disconnect within ourselves, that we don't have the the self-worth, the belief in ourselves that we should just have the conversation anyways, whether they hear it or not. Is that we need to express it?
Well, the settling is always I compromise what I want for what I think I can get. That's what the settling always is. And sometimes if we're so used to that, the pain of that has become so commonplace, and so kind of a background noise of your life, that feels like it's less of a pain than an actual confrontation, which a hard conversation is. It's a confrontation.
Yeah.
And we've just become so numb to the fact that we've denied our feelings for our whole life, that hard conversation seems impossible. Not just hard; it seems impossible.
Is
And
there
that's
any
just
point?
because we've been conditioned to that point.
Is there any point in having rehearsing or practicing that hard conversation with ourselves first, or is that too heady in our minds versus we can't imagine all the different outcomes that something's going to happen?
Yeah, no, you can't do it. You just got to do it. I mean, that's the only way, because rehearsing it in your mind is really just a way of putting it off. It could be useful to really be clear about what you actually want to say, and to make sure that you say it all. You may need to say, well, look, please just don't respond until I'm done. I need to get through this, which they would do in couples counseling and things like that. Give the person the space to actually say it. If the person is willing to do that, oftentimes you can't get out 2 sentences before. What are you talking about? Right? In which case, if that is the case, then you just have to. Then no conversation is possible, and there's only one solution to that, and that's get out of it.
Right. That's super set the boundary. Like, it's been said, and now I'm going to stay on my side of this boundary.
Well, now the boundary is like I'm, a different state.
Yeah. You just made me think of the song "All My Exes Live in Texas." Okay, this is and yes, we are live. Everybody who are here with us on School Live, and we're so happy that everybody is here. As we do this show, this is an opportunity for me to take our theme here and ask some questions as a student, as a master spiritual teacher here. GP Walsh answers us, and then I'm going to peek at all the questions and comments along the way. So please put them in. Just we are listening, and then we can get to bring them into the conversation a little later. This is the best part of this, is that there is some interaction as well. Okay, one type of hard conversation, I'm bringing this up right away, is the ones we actually really don't think we can have, and we no longer have the opportunity. Maybe somebody has died, and we didn't get to have that hard conversation. Is there any way of, I'm going to use your word here, having some kind of reconciliation, an inner reconciliation with ourselves? Can we have it within ourselves to reconcile that hard conversation
Yes,
not
of course. Of course. And it's not even just the hard conversation, things you wanted to say to somebody before they die. I mean, it's the sweet conversation, the things you wish you had said to them before you die, right?
Yes.
I mean, when somebody's gone, it's gone. And the opportunity for having, for clearing the air, for making your feelings clear, isn't there any longer. Now, the fact of the matter is, for most people with their parents and families and the like, that opportunity was never there in the first place. So it's always going to be inside of you. I mean, there's simply no way I could have ever had a conversation with my mother. It was impossible. It was impossible. 2 sentences, and then I might as well just, sit down and take a nap because she was going to go on for 3 days.
Oh boy.
So when someone is actually gone, right? If they have, first off, there's the people you love, and there's the period of grieving that has to go through. You have to go through first. After which you can begin to reconcile with them, because that energy is still there. If it's somebody you can't stand, and you're glad they're gone, right? Again, now you're the truth of the matter is you're always reconciling with yourself. There's a reconciliation that has to come to yourself, a willingness to accept your own feelings, and in that willingness comes the courage to say, I must have this conversation. Right? I simply have to. To not have it is to dishonor myself. Right? Is to make myself less than I am or that I want to be, and that could be when somebody's violating your boundaries, but it could also be somebody that you're going to break up with, right? Or someone someone, I'm leaving this job now. I liked it here, but I'm going to go somewhere else. There's a lot of times where we have to say things that isn't. It's a hard conversation because we don't want to hurt anybody either. And oftentimes people do stay in relationships because they don't want to hurt the other person, and so the dynamic is less. There's not as much intimacy, obviously, but so it always has to start with an acknowledgement of the validity of your own feelings, and coming to a place where you honor your own feelings, which of course at the same time allows you to honor others. But there's a wisdom in that recognizes that, okay, I am, but they may not.
Yeah.
And there's nothing I can do about that. But I have to, right? This is actually how I feel. I'm not happy with this. I don't like the way this is going. I don't like the way I'm being treated, and I have a right to say no. No, it can't be like this. Or I have to say a right to say, I don't love you anymore. I'm not going to be here. As difficult as that can be, one of the things to bear in mind is that love and truth are the same thing.
I was just going to bring up truth. I love that you said that. Okay.
To tell the truth is always the most loving thing to do, even if feelings are hurt.
My question was, I love that that was a beautiful cushion to what I'm going to say. What if the hard conversation is actually a confession? You need to tell somebody, Mom, I broke your vase, like when you're little, and you're so scared and something, but then it gets into deeper ones. Wow, I dishonored you. I did this, or I.
Oh, yes. Yeah, those are hard conversations too. Yeah, I'm sorry, but I lied to you.
Right. Yeah. So does it happen first that we have to honor that first of all, I guess there's a thing, do we still have to have that conversation? Is it really important to confess and clear the air? I like that you said that. That was a good one. And where do you begin? It's just that with yourself first, having it first.
Well, if the relationship is of value to you, then the confession of the soul is good for the soul. Right? If it isn't, if it doesn't have that kind of value, then the lying or mistreatment or whatever it might be won't have the same kind of impact on you. But if it's eating away from you, it means it's valuable. It means something. Right? And of course, at that point, what we have to honor is the value of our own integrity. Okay?
Ah,
Right? What does it mean?
integrity.
Why would I do this? Why would I be less than completely honest? Well, I'm afraid. I'm either afraid or I'm dismissive or I don't care. Right?
Or shameful.
Yeah, or I'm too ashamed, right, to fess up. I'm ashamed of. I'm afraid of the repercussions of what's going to happen. I'm afraid of having to take my own medicine. Um, all these things come up, and we have to come to terms with them. Is it always necessary, to confess, to have it printed in the front page of the New York Times? I don't think so.
Right. Yeah.
No, it's not like I have to do that. I have to go see the priest. Um, because it isn't the act itself. It's the inner repentance. It's the inner reconciling, the seeing the error of one's ways. If one truly sees that and is truly remorseful, that to the level where welcoming a change, welcoming a transformation, seeing the mistake, seeing the what you've done to them and to yourself, that opens the door for the right way for recompense. Sometimes there is no need. Sometimes it can't be done. Something said can't be unsaid. Right? That bell can't be unrung. And there is no way. And at that point, you simply have to accept the depths of the consequences. But other times, you have to take the risk, right? If the relationship means something to you, you have to take the risk of bringing it back to a level of integrity.
Yes. I like the integrity piece. And when those, whether it's that hard conversation of something wonderful, like, oh, you're going to propose. That's a hard conversation because you're worried there's like, a yes or no there. Because the word billboard popped up and I was like, oh, so many people want to make a big grandiose thing about an apology, a proposal, a confession, like, well, maybe not a billboard for confessions, but maybe, but how important is it that, yes, we check in with where our integrity lies and we have that reconciliation to how another person receives, how we have the languages of love. Is it important to be mindful and say, well, this is how they, I hope, or have learned about them, that they might receive this or hear me or be more compassionate and use their the heart chakra a little bit more here.
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, we want to shape the things we say most appropriately for who's listening to us. I mean, that's what a teacher does all the time, right? It's always shaping the words to fit the level of consciousness of the person you're talking to. But as long as you don't use that as a place to hide and as an excuse for letting yourself off the hook, well, they can't take it, right? Then yes, of course, if you've got a heart, you don't, you want to minimize the pain you cause, right? But you also want to be truthful, and sometimes it's not easy, Sometimes you want to downplay it. Sometimes you want to hide, right?
Yeah.
It's human nature. We've all done it.
I want to have this first part of this Homeschool Live class be about, like life, having conversations with people. And then I'd like to turn it inward and just chat a little bit about the hard conversations that we either do have or don't know how to have with ourselves. This is the inward looking.
Yeah, to turn it around. Well, it's always our capacity to be honestly and fully in relationship with anyone is directly in line with a direct result of the work we've done on ourselves. Right? Right? If I know enough about myself and I have accepted myself, I know where my boundaries are. I know what's acceptable to me and what isn't. I know what I can do and I know what I can't. Right? And remember, that's going to change over time. The process of inner work doesn't change. It's the same thing, but you're changing. The human being is changing all the time. So what used to be a piece of cake, 10 years ago, isn't a piece of cake now. What you could do then, you can't do now. So there's a constant reassessment going on. And our boundaries, our relationships, the things we're interested in, the things we care about, they're not a constant. You are, but they're not. They're changing constantly, right? A lot of times gradually over a long period of time. But none of us here is interested in the same things we were interested in when we were 10 or 20, right? And so we're always dealing with this dynamic. And the only way to deal with that dynamic is to have a solid relationship with yourself, that you're perfectly in harmony with the changes as they're occurring, and they become part of what you accept. Accepting that, I can't do this anymore. I can't do now what I could do when I was 30, right? I simply can't. and a story. So you increasingly introspective. The older you get, the more introspective you should get. It's weird how older people tend to get more and more closed in their thinking, because the more introspective you should be getting, because more and more is falling away. So yes, the inner work is always the key.
The inner one thing that's come up is I've met many people who have started having that introspective the conversations, or maybe therapy, maybe who knows, or something just suddenly triggers them, and now they are reminded of things they never knew about themselves that they had experienced or gone through. Perhaps it's traumatic, perhaps it's happy, like, wow, I haven't thought about that for so long. I'm throwing in a question about hypnotherapy here. Is hypnosis a way to have a conversation with yourself, or can self-inquiry get the job done?
Well, self-hypnosis and hypnotherapy are very useful therapeutic tools. Okay? They can help people transform deeply ingrained habits very quickly. Right? It's can many things. I mean, plant medicine can do that too if it's done in the hands of somebody who knows what they're doing. Otherwise, it's just recreational drugs. But it's a tough one.
It is a tough. I know, and I say this because
it's a
when
tough
we bury
one,
things, they're
the problem is with those things is there's never an examination of the sense of self itself. There's never a question. Self-inquiry is well, who am I? Right? All the therapeutic practices, as good as they are and as useful as they are always just taking the sense of yourself and improving it. They don't really question the truthfulness, the authenticity of the sense of self. Is this who you really are? And that only self-inquiry does that. And I don't like to be critical of any of these things, because they have their place, and there are times when they're really, really useful. If somebody's really struggling over something like an addiction, yeah, they're incredibly powerful, incredibly useful. But they're not existential, they're therapeutic. They can't bring you to the end game.
Okay, so you just gave me an idea of an example of that one, because not to prove your point, but to say, like, this is it. So if an honest, hard conversation needs to be had with an addict, and it could be an addict over anything, but it's not about. So the hard conversation really is, who am I? I just want to go follow the pathway here, so that it's not the hard conversation is, wow, I'm an addict and I need to stop and get help. It's more, who is having this challenge? Who is having this conflict? Who needs, is it to go deeper, to have that conversation, to find out who is experiencing it.
Yes, it really depends. If it's a really severe addiction, well, the first thing you need to do is get just some practical help. You have to,
Yeah.
right? Especially, well, all addictions by definition are destructive. They're a temporary, they're a temporary relief that has long-term negative consequences, and therefore it has to be curtailed. Now, for some, the consequences are milder. Like an addiction to caffeine, right, or something. But others, it's not, like alcohol, drugs, cigarettes, and some things like that, or even shopping. People can overspend themselves running credit cards up. So sometimes there has to be enough awareness, enough honesty to go, I need help, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Ultimately, all of the addictions arise from a misunderstanding of who we are, and those addictions are because of our identification with somebody we're not. Basically, the various forms that the egoic mind takes place. There's a dissatisfaction that we look to these external things to try to fill up, and they bring us temporary relief. And that temporary relief is soothing for a while, but it becomes it becomes Shiva's wheel. It becomes self-perpetuating to the point where the only relief you get is from the symptom that the addiction has caused in the first place. And now you're stuck in this wheel. Well, that needs to get broken. But the real question is, well, what is it? Why is it that I'm unhappy? What's missing, right? What's really missing? And what's always really missing is the sense of our own worth, the sense of our own value. And that only comes from coming to see yourself as you actually are. And then it can even go beyond that, but let's keep it at this level.
Yeah.
Let's keep it at this level here.
It's interesting because I'm wondering, could we have had a hard conversation in our lives, and it was so traumatic to us that to us, everybody's different, but we experience trauma from having it, from attempting it, from the result of it, from the buildup of it, that we just can write off having those hard conversations, setting those boundaries, having the respect, being in line with our integrity. And how do we get back from it if we have gone there?
Well, having a hard conversation can be difficult and painful, but it's not traumatic. The trauma is what keeps you from having the hard conversations.
Right.
It's the trauma that put you in that place in the first place. Right. So, yeah, they can be painful, but they're not traumatic. Remember, a trauma is when you can't fight and you can't run away, right?
Oh.
So, and that's what happens, right?
Wait, what?
And you can't fight and you can't flee. It's the fight and flight mechanism. A trauma is when you're in a position where the energy normally wants to either run away or fight, defend itself, right? To bring an end to the threat, right? When you can't run and you can't fight it, that energy can't discharge, and that's the trauma. It just gets stuck in the body, and it will last for a life. That's trauma.
Right. Oh, goosebumps. Okay.
If the energy is discharged by either running away and getting out of the danger, or fighting, which means you're going to prevail or die, right? In the wild, that's what it means. I'm going to prevail or I'm going to die. Then the energy is discharged, right? And it just kind of and it goes away. You watch a cat get in a fight, right? And it's just like the backs. I mean, they're totally 100% in.
That's right.
Right?
Yes.
But then they'll run. Usually, they get away, and 2 minutes later, they're sitting in the sun. Because that energy is gone. It's discharged. But if you can't run and you can't fight, it stays, and this is the trauma, and it affects the whole body. That's what trauma is.
Oh, I'm so glad you explained that. So, wow. So okay. So, a hard conversation could be a discharge of the energy of the trauma.
Yes, absolutely. It very well could be. Yes.
Right.
And that's why traumas are so common amongst children, because you can't run and you can't fight.
Yeah.
You simply can't.
Wow. Wow, I'm so glad we got to trauma. And now, because I wasn't thinking of it was going there. This is perfect. This makes so much sense. I can see these comments popping up. I have to jump over to some of them because, yes, I think now we're really hitting something here. And I just, because I'm just want to, a student Lisa here going in, that I found myself in a situation, something happened, I couldn't fight or run. And now it's 30 years later, 50, a day later, whatever. It's an energy pattern. And does the nervous system keep replaying it, or does it tuck it away and just keeps that response going? Or does it is that why it's coming to mind to get it out, to say, ask for help?
Yeah, well, it goes underground. First off, it's not like it's going to be in your mind. You could think of it as literally pools of energy that are stuck different places in your body. Like they say, we carry anger here, or you see people with tense shoulders and things and things like that. So it can actually be affecting the body. It's a very subtle energy. But remember, the trauma is I can't run and I can't fight. So what do? I have to hide. I freeze, right? I have and that, remember, it's a terror. I'm running or I'm fighting because it's life and death, and I can't do anything about it, but I don't die. So what happens, right? I'm in this position now of fight or flight, and I can't fight and I can't flee, and now the danger's gone away, but I'm still in that position. And it lingers, and it'll linger your entire life. It'll stay there, and it will, and it's a powerful energy, and because we don't want to feel that energy, that's why it gets suppressed, it gets pushed down, because you're in terror, right? You can't do anything around it, so you got to get rid of it. Shoom, you stick it down somewhere, but you don't want that to ever come back out. So the whole nervous system spends your whole life building layers of defense to keep it from you, to keep it from being experienced. But of course, it's taking energy, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's for the nervous system, it's holding a beach ball underwater. It's really difficult to do. So there's all of this energy going in to protecting or to keeping the trauma hidden. And this is why we feel low-level anxiety or low-level depression and things like that. We get, things don't work out for us. We find we just don't have the energy for certain things. It's because so much of our energy is in defensive mode, defending against what now is an imaginary enemy, but the nervous system doesn't know that. It's very real as far as it's concerned. And the last thing it wants is to have that trauma exposed, because if this is exposed, you're dead. Right? And this is why the process of inner reconciliation is so potent, because it's a means of very gently walking back to the point where that trauma is free to release itself.
Yes. Oh,
but it's
wow.
really good at throwing rocks in the bush and distracting, all sorts of things. Yeah, okay, that's really good. Come on, let's have another margarita. I mean, that's the way it's going to work, because it's committed to keeping it hidden, because it fears. We can come to understand that it won't kill us, right? But your nervous system doesn't know that. It's convinced that it will.
Right. And that's okay. Now this makes more sense why each one of us will have a different kind of a hard conversations depending on what our trauma is and how long, how deep, how intense, how much we have done that inner work to have that integrity and honoring of ourselves, and be able to now say, are we releasing trauma? Are we healing? Are we reconciling the trauma when we have that conversation?
We're reconciling. We're reconciling with our feelings. The process of reconciling with your feelings means I'm accepting my feelings as they are, which I'm accepting it all, including the intensity of a trauma. You have the trauma is held in place because the nervous system assumes there's danger. Right? That's why it's in that position. There was danger, can't fight, can't flee, boom, I'm here. Now, as far as it's concerned, the danger is still there. The trauma is that energy becomes released when the nervous system finally gets the message that it's safe. And so the whole process of inner reconciliation is creating a safe inner environment that allows the energy to move. It isn't the kind of thing you kind of go in and dig it out. It's not surgery, because it's just too smart. As long as you're trying to fix yourself, the nervous system is still convinced it's danger, right? You're fighting it. You're in conflict with it. So it's going, the danger's still there. I'm not budging, and it's way better at this than you are. But
Yes.
it responds to the one thing. Well, there's one thing for which there's absolutely no defense, and that's unconditional love. You need no defense for that. When that is detected in the environment, the nervous system immediately begins to adapt to it, because that's all it is. It's an adaptive mechanism. The moment it senses the environment is safe, that energy will start to flow again.
Yes. It's almost like I remember having nightmares and then calling somebody, mom or dad, and either one of them coming. As soon as they came in and you knew you were getting that hug, or you're like, whoo, kind of thing, right? You can breathe and stuff.
Yes.
And I have to mention this to everybody watching, because we're going to go into reading the comments now and answering some things, is that please, please visit not only just, gpwalsh.com, the website, but especially the entire YouTube channel. GP Walsh, you just said something that I love that you said. I specifically wrote, I was watching a video from 4 or 7 years ago, and I cannot remember now which one. It was so good. It was one of the tapping videos, because GP has done so many tapping videos that will help us go through these things. And I specifically wrote that one note down, was it's, whether we're doing these the self-inquiry and inner reconciliation is making the environment safe so that the energy can move. It's literally, I love that. It was one of my favorite things. I was like, oh, that's so good to know, because that's what you're doing. It's not fixing. It's not any of those other things. It's that.
Well, it's not broken.
Yes. Yeah.
The trauma is not a mistake. This is exactly what it needs to do to keep you alive, because otherwise you'd die.
Perfect. The trauma is not a mistake. I love
It's not
that.
a mistake.
So it's funny. I've got some of the notes I'm going to move into. So first of all, yes, please, everybody, if you are on YouTube with us right now, then you can we'd love a thumbs up. Don't forget to give us that and share this with people and do all your wonderful things and subscribe, because there's just so much good content. And there's it's fun going through it. You can pick an activity every day and just tap away and do it. But let's go back here. We'll go, because there was Bernadette had something about how do you start a conversation if your family thinks you're lying.
You may not be able to.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, don't think you have to have the hard conversation. It has to start here. When you recognize that it's something that needs to happen, that there's some boundaries that are being violated, there's some clarity that needs to be brought to, the next step is the wisdom to see whether or not it can actually happen, whether you can bring about some kind of reconciliation in this situation, some kind of healing, or you can't. And if you can't, you simply, God bless you, and you're on your way. And that really is sometimes the only thing you can do, as much as that might hurt. That is sometimes the only thing you can do, and just kind of wait for a time when there may be an opening, and it may happen, it may never happen. That's why the reconciliation has to take place here.
You think that actually helps answer somebody else's question about being ghosted, when you just simply cannot have a conversation with that other. I've been ghosted, so I know this, and I know you'd think, who would ghost me?
Really? Yeah, that's right.
It was I had a lot of frustration with it, because you don't have answers. You don't know if sometimes you don't have the answers. You don't know if you did something wrong, or if they just needed their own world, whatever. And but I like that it's inner reconciliation.
I worked with a woman once, a long time ago when I was still living in Florida, who she was in her 50s. She had been married. She had a couple of kids. She hadn't been married for a while. She was very successful, an executive with a retail company. Marvelous lady, just very, very bright, very witty and the like. And she was in a relationship with this man, really loved him. They were very, very close. And then one day, out of nowhere, he says, I can't, he calls her, I cannot see you anymore. I'm sorry, bang. That was it. Never heard from him again. And of course, she came to me and just completely broken, right? Now, something like that happened to somebody who's in her 50s. That could have wounded her for the rest of her life. So we worked together for 3 days straight. It was like an hour and a half to 2 hours a day, and we were tapping. That was the modality. There was no self-inquiry. Was a waste of time in this case. So we just sat there and tapped, and all I did was keep bringing her back to the feeling, because the mind kept wanting to make up a story, because it was just this blank thing, right? Why did he do this? He's a jerk. I was thinking, all the signs on the, well, why did he do what? It's just like all over the map. And all I did was we just kept tapping. I kept bringing her back to her body, to the feeling. Just kept bringing her back to there. The third day, after about an hour and a half in, the whole thing just broke. And she was utterly at peace. But
Whoa.
it took that to just keep staying with the body, allowing the body to do what it knows how to do, which is process grief. The more the story there was there, the less energy was going to the body, and the more it was perpetuating the grief. So it was not easy trying to keep her there, just watching it. And you know what it would be like. I mean, she was ghosted big time.
Yes, yeah. My first thing was like, was he held hostage? You wouldn't know. Do I need to help him?
Oh yeah. Listen to all the stories that you'd come up with, trying to kind of put a picture on that, when in fact you simply do not know. You simply do not know, and that complete emptiness of any kind of knowledge is just the mind is just prolific at making up stories, but all those stories do is perpetuate the pain. If you put all the stories aside and just be with the body and give it permission to do what it was designed to do, it will process the grief and free you on the other side, which doesn't demean the relationship. It doesn't, it's not a reframe. It's not sour grapes. He was an asshole anyway. Nothing like that. It's a genuine appreciation of it, but no longer that hardwired connection of misery and suffering. It's just left with peace and love.
Wow. I want everybody to have that kind of experience from hard conversation, because I think you're right. When setting the story aside and letting the body just feel and allow it to feel safe.
Well, that's how you do it.
Okay.
That's not, the intention is to make it feel safe. You say, okay, are you safe yet? That doesn't do any good. How do you make it feel safe? Well, you let it feel what it's feeling. You don't argue with it. You don't fight it. You don't try to make it feel something else. This is total self-acceptance, right? This is what I'm feeling right now, without a story. And the more you're in the body and in the sensations of it, the less story there is to it, and the more accepting it is. And that's the reconciliation that creates the safe environment, because you're not fighting it. Oh, it's safe, right? And so it just processes it, and fast, because the body's not stupid. It knows what to do.
That was so helpful, and that actually still explains and gives us a little bit of lesson on tapping as well. And that actually, I believe, helps the question about doing inner work to help. Can doing the internal energetic work help ease the tension? Yes, and I think that right there just answered that. It absolutely can. Yes.
It's the only thing that can, really. Right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the only. Everything else is pretty much suppressing. Right? Even Gabor Mate, who's a doctor that I really respect, his process is called compassionate inquiry.
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
It's going back into these things with compassion for ourselves and for the circumstances and for the body.
Yeah. And Kimberly asked something which we just said, how do we really heal trauma? So I think we've got that one. Thank you, Kimberly. Thank you, everybody, for your questions here. and then I'm going to jump into a big one about, big world stuff. Like, when it's literally like capitalism, government stuff like it. This is a big fight or flight thing. We can't fight it. We can't run from it. We can't do it. So I'm gonna leave you that. That's yours.
Well, yeah. Well, here's the deal. When we are just simply in our primitive selves, right, like a child or like an animal, when you can't run and you can't fight, you will be traumatized or dead, right? That's a fact. But there's another element here that doesn't get any attention, and that is conscious awareness. Conscious awareness can be in a position where you can't run and you can't fight and not get traumatized. The unconscious gets traumatized because the nervous system has to do something. But if consciousness is present, there's another element there that the nervous system doesn't have to suppress it. It doesn't have to bury it, right? This is the power of conscious awakening. You're no longer subject to these kinds of things. You cannot be traumatized because with the total acceptance, there's no resistance at all, even to your own death. So if there's no resistance to your death, there's nothing the body has to protect from.
True. Yes.
And this is where we have to become fearless, right? And this is how you become fearless, because of course these governments and the current economic systems and the like, they manipulate that in order to control. There's that there's that fun story I like to tell about Alexander the Great when he conquered India and got very fascinated by the stories, things he had heard about basically about enlightened sages, about yogis and the miracles, and so he found that not far from him there was a sage, an enlightened being, and he wanted to talk to him. So he sent his men to go bring him to him, so they would come and talk to him. And he sent a bunch, 20 guys to go, escort them, and they came back. They came back, I don't know how much longer later, and he said, "Well, where is he?" He said, "Well, he wouldn't come." He says, "What do you mean he wouldn't come? There are 20 of you." He said, "I don't know. We couldn't get him to come." And he was like, "Okay." So he gets on his horse with all the men. He rides personally out to see this little guy in little rags and stuff, And he says, "I bid you to come." He says, "I didn't want to." He says, "Do you know who I am?" He says, "No, I have no idea." He says, "I am Alexander the Great." To which he responds, "Anybody who says they're great isn't." And he pulls out his sword and says, "I could take your head off with one chop of this sword." To which he responds, "Go ahead. We'll both watch it fall to the ground." He gives up. He goes back. And he says to his assistant, "How do you control somebody who has no fear?"
Oh, I needed to hear that. Not the head thing, but
He had no fear. The sage has transcended death. And of course, it is the fear of the body dying that is the source of trauma. When that's gone, there is no such thing as trauma anymore. It cannot happen because you know yourself to be immortal.
Wow. That's really big. That was a great story to share. That's why you're the teacher. Wow. And so off he went. So, and what's really interesting, he actually did get to have the conversation he needed, though he didn't know, because he wanted to talk to a sage. He got to experience talking to a sage, and that, wow.
Yes, he got to experience it in the only way he could really have understood, in the terms of power, and he was powerless.
Right. Oh, that was so good. Ooh, I love that. Right. I think that does help. Let us know if that helps about, how to handle. When I was younger, I just really I couldn't live. I was in that moment of fight or flight when I would hear about animal abuse, and I wanted to fight all the people that did anything bad, and I wanted to hide and not see it and save things. And I just how could I live knowing this? And you have to find that place, which what you're saying, it was really good.
Yeah, you do have to find that place where you can be with that suffering, even when you can't do anything about it. I mean, that's the depth That's the depth of compassion. To not become jaded or shut down your emotions, right? And at the same time, don't be so overwhelmed with them or have them leave you bitter and angry. This is the middle way of the sage.
Yeah, it is. And because you might I get to do this every Tuesday, so I get to be with my master spiritual teacher. But if you are looking to have a session, like Daisy Dukes, I love that, is here asking, you know what, should we get her to, or him, get this lovely person to go to the website and book with you? Is that the best way?
Yeah, just go to gpwalsh.com and just go to there's a tab right at the top, Work With Me, and you can book a private session there.
Perfect. Thank you for asking. That goes for everybody. Yeah, we really appreciate that. Let's see here. How to deal with severe empty nest syndrome. So is that a conversation that you'd have to have? Or I guess that's with you're just dealing with stuff. But
well, it's just a part of life, right?
Yeah.
There's no hard conversation there, unless unless one of the two parents, if there are two parents, is in complete denial.
Yes.
Then you may have to have a hard conversation about it. But this is just part of of loving life and accepting life as it is. When the kids leave, right? I mean, the beautiful thing about nature is by the time the kids are ready to leave, the parents are ready for them to go.
Yeah.
The
tribe
priest,
and the nymph.
a priest, a minister, and a rabbi were all sitting around talking about when life begins. And the priest, of course, said, well, at the moment of conception, life begins. We hold all life is sacred. And the minister said, well, we're a bit more liberal about it. We think it starts about the third trimester. And they asked, what about you, Rabbi? He says, life begins when the kids move out and the dog dies.
Oh, freedom! Oh, I love it. Yes, and it's a good way to have good humor about these tough things. I want to go to Lisa's question. Can both parties do the inner energetic work simultaneously to come to an acceptance of the conflict instead of having the tough conversation?
Well, if you've got two people in a relationship that are both willing to do the inner work and show up for each other, recognizing, taking responsibility for their own triggers and stuff, you don't need that. You're not having conversations. You're doing it.
Right.
I mean, it's the absence of that creates the need for hard conversations, and even in circumstances like that, there'll be blind spots, and it may be kind of hard to point out to somebody, I think you may be projecting this. I don't really think this is me. But those aren't so hard when you've established an environment between you where it's okay to do that. And you can even push back and say, no, I don't think it's projection. I think you really are. But if there's a different level there at which you're both willing to examine it, well, it's not a hard conversation at all. It's an intimate one.
Oh. Wow, that's nice, actually. I like that. Yes. And we did a previous show where we really talked about what true intimacy is. And you just reminded me of that. There's so many beautiful places to go here. GP, you always have such great teachings, answers, conversation. There's so much here. And Susanna is requesting sessions to how to handle with ghosting, private sessions on ghosting.
Private sessions on ghosting, yeah.
It really is. It's literally when you cannot have the hard conversation. That's the one I want to make sure that I covered that in my topics. I'm just going to have a quick peek at some of the things because I know we're at the end of our show here, our class. But okay, yes. I had one of my questions. Okay, so let's just say I have to have a hard conversation with a friend. And I have an expectation of the response I want. My ego is like, I'm going to have this conversation because it's going to fix this. And then I'm going to feel heard and they're going to change and la, 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 la. And then you start this and nothing goes that way at all. So what's the best way to just go in with no attachment to an outcome?
Well, yeah, I mean, face the fact, it's not going to go the way you think it is. The reaction rarely happens. Um, Oftentimes, the dynamic can be somebody become extremely defensive, even if they know you're
Yeah.
right. Um, Creating an environment in which it can happen and really be honest. I mean, you can't prepare for this stuff. Can't prepare. I'll tell you another story. Boy, it's story day today.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh,
there's two monasteries. A kind of an ethnic or Tibetan, more strict Buddhism, and the other was a Zen temple. And the ones in the more strict Buddhism were told you cannot have anything to do with those people in the Zen temple. They're weird. They're odd. And one day, one of the a young monk, because they start very young, they sent him off to the market to buy a bunch of stuff. And along the way, path, he runs across the young monk from the Zen temple. And they're young. He can't help it. And he says to the young Zen monk, "Where are you going?" He says, "Me? I'm not going anywhere. I've come from nowhere. I don't even exist. I'm a cloud passing through the sky." Well, the poor other little monk, he got totally freaked out. He kind of ran ahead. He went back, and after he'd been to the market, he confessed to his senior monk. I talked to him. And this is what he said. He said, "See, they're crazy. They're nuts. This is why you can't talk to them. Now, here's what I want you to do." And he gave him a speech, a little thing that he's going to say. Now, the next time you see him, right, and ask him where the market, and he says that, this is what you're going to say back to him. So this monk, he worked on it. He memorized the whole thing. He was all ready. And a couple days later, he's all ready to go. And there's the Zen monk. He goes, "Okay, I got this." He goes, "Hey, how you doing? Where you going?" And the Zen monk goes, "To the market. Where are you going?"
Oh, so true.
You cannot prepare for life, okay? You
Oh my
cannot
gosh.
prepare for life.
Yes, that is a perfect story for that. That's literally it. It goes both ways that way. Oh. Oh, well, I hope the Zens and the other monks get along one day. But oh, wow! Thank you. Did we get everybody as well? Did I miss? I know there's one about qigong, but that would fall under other modalities, other energetic work.
Yeah, and
Everything.
qigong's wonderful. I highly recommend it. It's also very powerful. Yeah, but it's not self-inquiry.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Different modality. Yes.
completely.
And we love that Jennifer has stopped watching TV and listening to radio as much. She's much happier.
We had a lot of questions today.
I know, this is good. I love her.
Yeah,
The
very good.
conversation's going on. Oh, we love everybody. We're so appreciative. This really is, for me, it's been, and the word isn't transformative at all. It has been so revealing as I do my self-inquiry, and it's just so much easier than you think. There's really it's called inner work, but it's not really like a lot of work. It's fun. You're like, wow, that's why, or this is who, or that makes sense, or wow, thank you, trauma, bye-bye. Like, it's just really
Well, it is. The
result.
beauty of self-inquiry and this way of approaching things is, while it has the therapeutic impact, just like the therapies does, it brings a depth of understanding of the nature of life that the therapeutic can't.
Yeah.
I mean, it can make things better, it can help you, make you more functional and all that, but this shows you the workings. This makes you wise.
Yes. I had the word wisdom in there and my brain floating around. Aw. Well, thank you, GP. This has just been fantastic again. And I just want to invite everybody, please, gpwalsh.com. You will literally find everything that you were looking for there. And if you don't, you can comment and question and ask us. We'll send you around. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next Tuesday. And thank you, GP.
Thank you, Lisa.